Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to sink our teeth into something that looks tiny, ordinary, and utterly overlooked: the 2020 Lincoln 1-cent coin. I want you to imagine holding this coin between your thumb and forefinger. It's light, a little warm from your skin, the brownish copper plating catching the light. It's a coin most of us don't think twice about. But like almost every coin in American history, even one as recent and common as the 2020 penny has stories to tell. Stories about design and symbolism, metal and weight, minting processes, human error, collecting markets, myths about insane values, and the real-world numbers that matter to collectors and everyday people. So put your curiosity goggles on. I'm going to walk you step by step through what this coin is, why it looks the way it does, how much it weighs, what the little d means, what kinds of errors can make it worth more than a cent, how the market actually behaves, and why the rumor mill sometimes throws out astronomical numbers like $87 million, and why you should treat those claims with a giant grain of salt. First, the basics. The 2020 Lincoln cent is part of the modern Lincoln Shield series that's been in regular use since 2010. On the obverse, or heads, side, you have the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, the same portrait lineage that traces back to Victor D. Brenner's design from 1909, a design that's been reinterpreted and re-engraved over the decades but remains the same iconic Lincoln silhouette. On the reverse, or tails, side is the Union Shield, a stylized shield with vertical stripes and a horizontal bar that bears a scroll with the inscription, 1 cent. That shield design was introduced as the Lincoln cent's new, permanent, reverse in 2010 and is intended to symbolize President Lincoln's preservation of the Union during the Civil War. The Denver Mint mark, the small capital D stamped to the right of the date, tells you which mint struck the business strike of the coin you're holding, Denver. For the specs you actually care about when you weigh, photograph, or grade a coin, diameter is 19.00 millimeters, mass is 2.50 grams, composition is modern copper-plated zinc, about 97.5% zinc core with a very thin 2.5% copper plating, and the edge is plain, no reading, no serrations. These are the hard facts collectors, dealers, and grading services reference. PCGS +1 if you're wondering about mintage numbers for 2020, those can vary by mint mark and strike type. The business strikes for Philadelphia and Denver were produced in the hundreds of millions. This coin was still being mass-produced for everyday circulation. There were also proof coins struck at San Francisco, marked S, with far lower numbers for collectors, and those proofs are a different market. When you hear proof, you should think of specially struck collector coins with more controlled striking conditions and mirror fields. They're often sold in sets directly by the U.S. Mint and have far smaller mintages than the everyday change that passes through your pockets. In short, standard 2020 business strikes are abundant. Proofs and specially packaged mint sets are limited but not extremely rare when compared to older, classic rarities. USA Coin Book +1. Now let's talk about weight and metal, because this matters in two ways. First, to the naked eye and to a simple scale, the 2020 penny will register 2.50 grams and look like copper, because it's copper-plated. But underneath that warm copper hue is a zinc core. That change, from mostly copper to copper-plated zinc, happened in 1982 and continues to the present, a move the mint made for cost reasons and to keep the coin affordable to produce. The plating is thin. Drop a modern penny into a weak acid solution, and it will begin to lose that copper color, revealing the pale gray of zinc underneath. That difference in metal also makes the penny behave differently when it's struck, when it ages, and when it comes to errors. Zinc can split or react differently under certain stressors, and the plating can flake or chip, which creates collectible error varieties. Lincoln Cents Guide +1. You asked about the coin, symbol, and the design's meaning. The obverse symbol, Lincoln's portrait, is both a portrait and an intentional piece of national memory. It celebrates the man and evokes continuity across more than a century of Lincoln cents. The reverse shield is a deliberately patriotic, compact symbol. The shield's vertical stripes represent the states joined in support of the federal government, and the horizontal bar with 1 cent represents the federal government itself. When Lyndall Bass and others reimagined the reverse for 2010, they intentionally used the shield to get away from the more literal, pictorial reverses used in 2009's bicentennial series and moved toward a timeless symbol that could function as the penny reverse for years to come. That's why, even on a dull backyard change coin like a 2020D penny, there's a design with an explicit message and a lineage that ties back to deep American iconography. United States Mint. Let's shift now to what makes one of these coins collectible. For modern pennies, and the 2020D is a perfect example, there are a handful of pathways to extra value. First, uncirculated high-grade examples, coins taken straight from mint sets and kept pristine, then graded by an independent grading service like PCGS or NGC, can fetch multiples of face value. That's because a near-perfect modern coin is a finite thing. Even if millions were struck, only a fraction survive in flawless MS-67 or MS-68 condition. Second, proof coins, the S mint mark, and early release proofs with special finishes attract collectors in different numbers. Third, and often the most exciting for hobbyists who check pocket change, are minting errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, struck through grease, planchet defects, collar and die break errors, and die doubling, which is different from later machine doubling issues, can produce coins that look dramatic and that the market will pay for. Fourth, unusual patterns or test strikes. But these are very, very rare for modern pennies unless they're legitimately documented. For the average 2020D business strike in circulated condition, the simple reality is that it generally trades at or near face value unless one of these special conditions applies. Coin Value Checker +1. Now let me spend a minute on error types you might find on the 2020D specifically, because these are what people usually mean when they say a modern coin is worth money. One common find is doubling, either as a double die obverse (DDO) or double die reverse (DDR), where the hubbing process caused the die to receive a slightly shifted second impression, producing visible doubling on letters or numerals. These can add value if the doubling is significant, and if the coin is in high grade. However, minor machine doubling, which looks like a light, shelf-type doubling, is nearly worthless. Another collectible class is struck through errors where grease, foreign material, or a clipped collar interferes with the strike, leaving out pits, blobs, or missing details. Off-center strikes where the coin was not centered under the press can be valuable if the offset is dramatic, often at least 20% to 30% or more, and the coin retains identifiable features, but small offsets under 5% are typically ignored. There are also rare examples of laminate failure where the copper plating peels and flakes. On any given 2020D, these anomalies can raise value from a few dollars to a few $100s, and in unusual cases more, but the odds of finding a genuinely high-end error in pocket change remain low. Marketplace listings and auction results for 2020 errors often show asking prices from $10 up to a few $100s for interesting errors. Once in a while, a superb, unusual error or high-grade certified example will push into the low thousands. eBay +1. Now that we've laid the foundation with the basic details, weight, composition, mint mark, symbolism, design, and the overall market reality, it's time to roll up our sleeves and go deeper. Because if you're serious about understanding why some coins skyrocket in value while others remain worth 1 cent forever, you need to know how the grading process works, how error classification is done, and how professional dealers and collectors actually talk about coins behind the scenes. This is where a lot of beginners fall into the trap. They think any odd-looking penny is worth a fortune, but the professionals know that it's all about details, rarity, demand, and documentation. So let's get into the details that separate a simple curiosity from a six-figure numismatic prize. First, grading. Probably the single most important concept in modern coin collecting. When you hear terms like MS-65, MS-67, red, brown, or full red, those are not just marketing buzzwords. They are part of a universal grading language that collectors, dealers, and auction houses use to establish value. The MS stands for mint state, referring to coins struck for circulation but preserved without wear. The scale runs from 1 to 70, with MS-60 being an uncirculated coin that might have contact marks, and MS-70 being a perfect coin with flawless surfaces and strike. Most modern pennies, including 2020D business strikes, if kept untouched and immediately stored after minting, will land in the MS-65 to MS-67 range if submitted to a grading service. But jumping from MS-67 to MS-68 can mean a huge jump in price, sometimes from $20 to $200 or more. Why? Because population reports show how many coins exist at each grade. If 5,000 coins are MS-67 but only 30 coins are MS-68, that scarcity drives collector competition. It's the same principle that drives the art market or classic car prices. Rarity and condition matter immensely. Now, about those color designations, BN means brown, RB means red-brown, and RD means full red. Because the copper plating on modern pennies can tone or darken over time, original red color, that fiery, bright orange-red hue straight from the mint, is more desirable. Collectors will pay a premium for a full red MS-68 versus a brown MS-68. The difference could be double or triple the price, and sometimes even more. That's why, if you find a pristine 2020D penny with blazing original luster, it's worth handling carefully and possibly submitting to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. Now, let's go further into error varieties, the area that excites the imagination and drives a lot of those viral stories. You already know about doubling, off-center strikes, and struck-through errors. But let's break down a few more nuanced types that are particularly relevant for 2020. Point 1 is a broad strike error, which occurs when the collar fails and the coin expands beyond its normal diameter, producing a flatter, broader coin with missing rim details. Another is a die cap error, where a coin sticks to the die and strikes subsequent coins, creating a bizarre, bottle cap-like shape. BIE errors, tiny die breaks forming a vertical bar between the letters B and E in Liberty, are also collectible, though usually modest in value. There are CUDs, which are raised blobs of metal on the rim caused by a piece of the die breaking off, and die clashes, where the dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring ghost-like design elements from one side to the other. Each of these errors tells a story about what went wrong in the minting process. They're like fingerprints of industrial accidents, and collectors love them because they're unique. No two errors are exactly alike. And while many of these errors sell for modest sums, from $20 to a few $100s, dramatic errors in high grade can break into 4 or 5-figure territory. A full blockage, a mirror image strike caused by a stuck coin acting as a die, or a spectacular off-center strike with full date and mint mark visible could sell for thousands, especially if certified. Now, let's tackle the question of market myths. If you type 2020 penny worth millions into a search bar, you'll find countless videos and articles claiming that a 2020D penny sold for $87 million, or that one is worth more than a mansion. These stories are usually based on misunderstandings or deliberate exaggerations. Sometimes they stem from misreading auction listings for unrelated coins. Sometimes they're clickbait designed to get views from people hoping their pocket change is secretly a jackpot. And sometimes they're based on confusion with pattern coins or unique error coins from other dates. The truth is, no verified sale of a 2020D Lincoln cent has ever reached anywhere near the $1 million mark, let alone $87 million. The most expensive Lincoln cents in history, like the 1943 bronze cent and 1958 double die, have sold for under $500,000. So when you hear those outrageous numbers, remember that the coin world has its share of myths and legends, but the cold, hard data tells a very different story. Still, it's worth asking, why do these myths persist? Part of it is human psychology. We love stories of hidden treasure, of ordinary objects turning out to be priceless. Coins, being small, common, and tied to history, are perfect vessels for that fantasy. And occasionally, real life mirrors that fantasy. Someone really does pull a rare double die or off-metal error out of circulation and sells it for thousands. Those stories, though rare, fuel the belief that any coin could be a lottery ticket. And while 99.999% of the time a 2020D penny is worth 1 cent, That tiny fraction of a percent where it isn't keeps people searching. Let's talk about provenance and authentication next. Two terms that play a major role in high-value coins. Provenance refers to the documented ownership history of a coin. A coin once owned by a famous collector or part of a renowned collection can command higher prices simply because of its pedigree. Authentication is the process of verifying that a coin is genuine and has not been altered or tampered with. Third-party grading services like PCGS, NGC, and Annex specialize in this. They examine coins under microscopes, verify metal composition, measure dimensions, and compare details to known die varieties. Once authenticated, the coin is sealed in a tamper-proof holder with its grade and serial number, a process known as slabbing. Slabbed coins trade more easily on the market because buyers trust the grade and authenticity. It's also important to understand the role of population reports. These are statistics released by grading companies showing how many coins of a certain type and grade they've certified. Collectors pay close attention to these numbers. If, for example, there are only 10 2020D pennies graded MS68RD by PCGS, that scarcity can drive fierce bidding competition. If there are thousands, the market will be softer. This dynamic explains why even relatively common coins can sometimes fetch high prices, not because the coin is rare in absolute terms, but because it's rare in that particular condition. Another key factor is eye appeal. Two coins with the same grade can sell for very different prices if one has more attractive toning, stronger luster, or a better strike. Eye appeal is subjective but powerful. Collectors are often willing to pay a premium for coins that are not just high grade but visually stunning. So if you're evaluating a 2020D penny, look beyond just wear and contact marks. Consider how the light plays off the surfaces, how even the color is, and whether the details are crisp. So, now that we've explored the basics, the grading, the errors, and the myths, it's time to talk about something that often doesn't get enough attention: the human side of the coin market. Because coins aren't just pieces of metal. They're stories, they're investments, they're history, and they're also part of a huge psychological landscape that drives people to pay ridiculous amounts of money for something that, at its core, costs the government less than a cent to make. To truly understand why someone might pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for a 2020D penny, and why wild claims of $87 million persist, we need to look at human behavior, not just minting facts. Let's start with collector psychology. At the heart of coin collecting is the concept of scarcity plus desire. Humans place extraordinary value on things that are rare, hard to get, or perceived as special. Even when something is objectively common, like the billions of 2020D cents, we'll still pay a premium if we believe ours is better, rarer, or unique. This is why registry set competition is so fierce. Imagine two collectors building sets of Lincoln cents. They both have MS67 coins. But one collector finds an MS68RD, only a handful exist in that grade. Now they have an advantage. That advantage isn't just bragging rights. It's prestige, status, and often resale value. People will pay exponentially more for that one grade jump, even though the coin looks almost identical to the naked eye. Then there's the emotional connection. Many collectors start young. A parent or grandparent hands them a jar of coins and they find a wheat cent or a steel penny. That little discovery ignites a lifelong passion. By the time they're adults with disposable income, they're willing to spend big on coins that connect them back to those childhood moments. The 2020D penny might not have the historical weight of an 1804 silver dollar, but for someone who started collecting during the pandemic, it might represent their first real treasure hunt. That emotional layer adds intangible value that numbers alone can't explain. Now, let's pivot to the real-world marketplace, where these psychological forces translate into actual dollars. The coin market isn't just hobbyists swapping pocket change. It's a global industry with auction houses, investment funds, grading companies, and high-profile sales that make headlines. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections handle tens of millions of dollars in coin sales annually. And while the bulk of that money goes to classic rarities, modern coins, including Lincoln cents, are increasingly part of that ecosystem. Let me give you a real-world example. A 2020D Lincoln Cent graded MS68RD by PCGS sold for over $300. Not a life-changing sum, but think about it. That's 30,000 times its face value. Why? Because at the time of the sale, there were only a few dozen known examples at that grade. That scarcity created a bidding war among registry set collectors. Another example, a dramatic off-center strike error from 2020, with about 70% of the design missing but the date and mint mark fully visible, sold for nearly $1,000. Again, that's not because the coin contained precious metal or ancient history, it's because it was rare, certified, and visually striking. But let's look beyond individual sales and consider the bigger picture. Coins are increasingly being seen as alternative investments. Just like art, wine, or vintage cars, rare coins are tangible assets that can appreciate over time. Wealthy investors sometimes allocate a portion of their portfolio to numismatics as a hedge against inflation or economic instability. Now, a 2020D penny probably isn't going to become the centerpiece of an investment portfolio. But the psychology of investment trickles down. When people see headlines about a rare coin selling for millions, it reinforces the idea that coins can be valuable, which drives more people into the market. More participants mean more demand, and more demand means higher prices, even for modern coins in top condition. And here's where the dark side creeps in: scams and misinformation. Because so many people dream of finding a fortune in their change, scammers exploit that hope. They'll list ordinary 2020D pennies on online marketplaces for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, claiming they're rare errors. They'll Photoshop photos, mislabel coins, or simply lie about what they're selling. They know that beginners might not know the difference between machine doubling and a true double die, or between a common coin and a rare one. And unfortunately, many people fall for it. That's why one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you is this: never buy a high-priced coin unless it's certified by a reputable grading company, or unless you fully understand how to authenticate it yourself. Certification is your protection against fraud. There's another type of misinformation too, not outright scams, but exaggeration. Some sellers list coins with ridiculous "buy it now" prices, like $50,000 or $1 million for a modern penny. They're not expecting anyone to buy. They're trying to manipulate search results, create artificial hype, and make their listings look more valuable by comparison. The truth is, the price a seller asks means nothing. The only number that matters is the sold price, what someone actually paid. That's why it's important to check completed sales, auction archives, and price guides. Those sources show you reality, not wishful thinking. Now, let's circle back to that infamous number, $87 million. Could any modern Lincoln cent ever reach that value? To answer that, we need to look at the most expensive coins ever sold. The 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, widely believed to be the first silver dollar struck by the U.S. Mint, sold for $10 million. The 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle, a coin surrounded by legal battles and mystery, sold for $18.9 million. The 1822 capped bust half eagle, with only 3 known specimens, sold for $8.4 million. Notice a pattern? These coins are centuries old, extremely rare, and historically significant. They're not recent mass-produced coins. For a 2020D penny to reach even a fraction of those prices, it would have to be something utterly extraordinary, a unique experimental strike, a coin with a documented historical event tied to it, or a one-of-a-kind minting anomaly. Even then, tens of millions is unlikely. But again, the myth persists. People love the idea of a lottery ticket hiding in plain sight. And that's okay. In fact, that's part of the fun. As long as you temper your expectations with knowledge, you can enjoy the hunt without falling for the hype. Think of coin collecting like fishing. Most of the time, you catch small fish. Occasionally, you catch something decent. Once in a lifetime, you might catch a monster. But you don't fish because you expect the monster every time. You fish because the process is enjoyable, and the possibility keeps you casting. Let's also talk about the long-term potential of modern coins like the 2020D penny. While they may not skyrocket in value overnight, their future worth depends on several factors. First is survival rate. Billions may have been minted, but over decades, many will be lost, damaged, or melted. Second is collector interest. As generations pass, people who grew up in the 2020s might feel nostalgic for coins from their youth, just as collectors today chase coins from the 1950s or 1960s. Third is error discovery. Sometimes, new die varieties are identified years or even decades after coins are minted. If a previously unknown major doubled die or transitional error is discovered in the 2020 series, demand could spike. Fourth is condition rarity. As circulated coins disappear and high-grade examples become harder to find, top-grade pieces may become more desirable. There's also the question of complete sets. Many collectors aim to build date and mint mark sets of Lincoln cents, one from every year and every mint. For those collectors, even common coins like the 2020D are essential. And if they want the best of the best for their sets, they'll compete for the highest graded examples. That competition is what drives those MS68RD prices into the hundreds, even for coins that cost 1 cent to make. Another interesting aspect is how technology is changing the hobby. Social media, YouTube, and online marketplaces have democratized coin collecting. You no longer need to attend coin shows or read print catalogs. You can learn about errors, research auction records, and buy coins all from your phone. This has expanded the hobby's reach dramatically. Millions of people who might never have considered collecting are now checking their change. We've spent a lot of time talking about the basics, the grading, the errors, and the psychology of collecting, but one of the most fascinating aspects of coin collecting, and one that often goes overlooked by beginners, is the world of die varieties. This is where things get truly deep. A die variety isn't just an error, it's a deliberate or accidental variation in the die itself that leads to a slightly different design, lettering, or detail on the coin. And even though the 2020D Lincoln cent is a modern issue, it's no exception. Varieties do exist, and for serious collectors, they're some of the most exciting discoveries you can make. Let's break this down. A die is the metal stamp that strikes the coin's design into the blank planchet. Every die is created by impressing a design from a master hub. Ideally, every die for a given coin type and year should look identical. But in reality, tiny differences can occur. Sometimes this happens because the hub was doubled during the impression process, resulting in doubled dies. Sometimes, there are minor re-engraving marks, misplaced mint marks, or slight differences in lettering. And sometimes, intentional changes are made, like minor design tweaks during the year, creating transitional varieties. These small differences, often invisible to the casual observer, become huge points of interest in numismatics. They're cataloged, photographed, and studied. And collectors will pay premiums for them because they represent the complexity of the minting process and the uniqueness of each production run. For the 2020D penny, there are already known and suspected varieties. Some involve subtle doubling on the date or the word liberty. Others involve slight differences in the shield lines on the reverse. There are also RPM, or repunched mint mark varieties, where the D was punched twice in slightly different positions, a phenomenon more common in earlier decades but still possible in the modern era. And while these varieties don't always command massive premiums, some have sold for $20, $50, or even more depending on rarity, demand, and condition. The key is documentation. If a variety is confirmed by organizations like CONICA, Combined Organizations of Numismatic Era Collectors of America, and listed in references like the Cherry Picker's Guide, it becomes far more desirable. Now let's turn our attention to something that most people never think about: what actually happens inside the Denver Mint. The minting process is a fascinating mix of high-tech precision and old-fashioned mechanical brute force. Every day, enormous presses strike hundreds of coins per minute. Blanks are fed into the press, struck between obverse and reverse dies, and ejected into bins by the thousands. The scale is staggering. Billions of coins a year, each one produced to strict tolerances. But even with this level of automation, things happen. Dies wear out and are replaced. Planchets jam and cause misfeeds. Collars break. foreign objects find their way into the machinery. And every one of those mistakes can create an error coin or variety that ends up in circulation, a tiny piece of minting history that collectors hunt for decades later. There's also an element of mystery that surrounds the minting process. Not everything that happens inside the mint is publicly documented. Some varieties are discovered years after the coins were struck, leading to debates among collectors about how they happened. In rare cases, employees have even smuggled out experimental strikes or pattern pieces. Illegal, of course, but those coins sometimes surface decades later and become legendary rarities. While that's far less likely in the modern era due to strict security, it adds to the mystique. The idea that somewhere, in a sealed vault or a forgotten box, a unique 2020 penny variety might exist keeps collectors searching. Speaking of searching, let's talk about hoards, one of the most dramatic and romantic aspects of numismatics. A hoard is simply a large accumulation of coins discovered at once, often after decades or centuries of being hidden. Hoards can dramatically change the market for certain coins, but they can also reveal previously unknown varieties or minting quirks. While there hasn't been a famous hoard of 2020 pennies yet, it's still too soon. The concept is worth understanding because it could affect the future value of these coins. Imagine if, 50 years from now, someone opens a forgotten bank vault and finds thousands of uncirculated rolls of 2020 cents. That could flood the market with high-grade examples and lower their value. On the other hand, if most 2020 cents are spent, damaged, or melted over time, pristine examples could become scarce, and their value could rise. Hoards are unpredictable, but they're a major factor in long-term market dynamics. Another layer to this conversation is the role of third-party researchers and numismatic organizations. Groups like the American Numismatic Association, ANA, the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and independent experts constantly study coins, catalog new varieties, and publish findings. These discoveries sometimes make headlines in the collecting world. A small detail, a doubled serif, a misplaced mint mark, an unusual planchet alloy, can elevate a previously ignored coin into a desirable rarity overnight. If a major new 2020 variety were to be confirmed, you can bet it would spark renewed interest and potentially push prices upward. Now let's talk about future predictions, because this is where things get truly interesting. What will the 2020 penny be worth in 20, 50, or 100 years? Obviously, no one can predict the future with certainty, but we can make educated guesses based on historical trends. Over time, coins tend to follow a few predictable patterns. Common coins remain common, but high-grade examples become scarce. Rare errors and varieties become more valuable as they're documented and sought after. And historical context adds intangible value. Coins from significant years often attract more collector interest. And 2020, as we all know, was not just any year. It was a year of global upheaval, economic change, and historical significance. That context could make coins from 2020, even ordinary ones, more desirable to future collectors. Another long-term factor is the future of physical currency itself. With digital payments on the rise and talk of eliminating low-denomination coins, it's possible that the penny could eventually be discontinued. If that happens, every existing penny instantly becomes a piece of history, and demand could spike. That's exactly what happened with discontinued coins like the half-cent, the 2-cent piece, and the large cent. Once they were no longer in circulation, collector interest soared. If the penny meets the same fate, even modern issues like the 2020 could benefit. We should also talk about the global market, because American coins don't exist in a vacuum. U.S. coins are collected worldwide. In fact, American numismatics is one of the most popular segments of the global coin market. Collectors in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East regularly participate in U.S. coin auctions, sometimes paying premium prices for high-grade examples. This international demand adds a layer of support to coin values. A 2020 penny might seem trivial in Denver, but to a collector in Tokyo or Berlin trying to complete a U.S. typeset, it's a must-have. And then there's the role of technology and data. Today's collectors have access to tools that previous generations could only dream of: online auction archives, population reports, image databases, and error attribution guides. These resources make it easier than ever to identify rare coins and varieties, which in turn drives up competition for the best pieces. But it also means that coins once considered worthless can suddenly gain value when new information surfaces. The more people study the 2020D series, the more likely it is that new discoveries will emerge. Let's not forget about the role of storytelling in value. Coins with stories sell better, it's a fact. A penny that was part of a famous hoard, owned by a notable collector, or featured in a major publication often commands a premium. Even provenance as simple as being the highest graded example known can turn a common coin into a desirable one. Storytelling is powerful because it connects the coin to a broader narrative, and people don't just buy metal, they buy stories. By now, we've talked about almost everything that makes the 2020D penny special: its design, its history, its varieties, its grading, its psychology, and even its future potential. But nothing brings those ideas to life like real examples. So let's start part 5 with a look at some true stories from the world of coin collecting. The kind of stories that prove why people take this hobby so seriously, and why coins that most people overlook can sometimes change lives. One of the most famous examples involves a coin that isn't the 2020D penny itself but proves a powerful point about how condition and rarity multiply value. In 2010, a collector found a modern Lincoln cent, minted in 1999, that had been struck with an incredible degree of perfection. It was graded MS-70, a theoretically perfect grade that almost never happens with business strike coins. That single penny sold for over $2,000. Now, $2,000 isn't $87 million, but think about it. That's a 200,000 times return on face value. That's what the right grade, combined with demand and registry competition, can do. Another story: a 1983 Lincoln cent with a double die reverse, one of the most famous modern varieties, has sold for over $7,000 in top condition. And the 1992 D close AM variety, where the spacing between the A and M in America is unusually tight, has sold for $25,000. All of these coins were once just regular pocket change. Most people spent them without a second thought. But to a trained collector's eye, they were treasure. And that's the lesson: the difference between a 1-cent coin and a 5-figure coin isn't magic, it's knowledge, patience, and attention to detail. Even in the ultramodern era, we see this happening. A 2020 W Lincoln cent struck as part of a special collector set, graded PR70 Deep Cameo, has sold for hundreds of dollars. Certain 2020D errors, like broad strikes, dramatic off-centers, or coins struck on foreign planchets, have sold for hundreds or thousands. These sales are real, documented, and ongoing. They show that while the $87 million headline is fantasy, substantial value absolutely exists for coins like the 2020D in the right circumstances. Now let's talk about collections, because this is where the real money often is. While individual coins can be valuable, full sets are where collectors and investors really shine. Imagine you assemble a complete set of Lincoln cents from 1909 to present, every date, every mint mark, every major variety, all certified in top condition. That's not just a collection, that's a historical archive. Sets like this have sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 2015, a complete registry-quality Lincoln cent set sold for nearly $2 million. Many of those coins weren't individually worth massive sums. But together, they represented completeness, rarity, and quality, a combination that drives serious demand. Building a collection like that takes strategy. Most experts recommend a top-down approach. Start with the key dates and rare varieties first, because those are the hardest to find and tend to appreciate fastest. Once you have the rare coins, fill in the common ones. For the 2020D, that might mean focusing on finding the highest graded examples you can, MS68RD or higher, as well as certified error coins or recognized die varieties. Over time, those coins will be the cornerstones of a modern collection that could one day become highly valuable. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how to maximize the value of a 2020 penny, or any modern coin you own. It all starts with preservation. Coins are surprisingly delicate. The natural oils on your skin can cause corrosion over time. Scratches, nicks, and spots can dramatically reduce a coin's grade and value. That's why serious collectors handle coins only by the edges, preferably while wearing cotton gloves. They store them in inert, acid-free holders or capsules to prevent environmental damage. If you have a 2020 penny that looks pristine, protect it immediately. You can't go back once damage is done. Next comes grading. As we've discussed, grade is everything in modern coins. A 2020 penny in MS65 might be worth $5. In MS68, it might be worth $200. In MS69, it might be worth $500 or more, if such a grade exists. That's why professional certification is worth the investment. PCGS, NGC, and ANAX are the most respected grading services. They authenticate the coin, assign a grade, and encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder. That certification not only protects the coin physically but also gives buyers confidence, and confidence drives price. After grading, think about timing. The coin market, like any market, fluctuates. Sometimes demand for a particular series surges, for example, after a major anniversary or a big media story. Selling into a strong market can make a huge difference. Conversely, if the market is soft, it might be better to hold. Also, keep an eye on population reports. If very few MS68 examples exist today, but grading submissions spike and dozens more appear, prices could drop. Knowledge of market cycles and population trends can help you sell at the right time. Another advanced strategy is to leverage provenance and story. If your coin was part of a famous collection, or if it was featured in a publication, that can add value. If you discover a new variety and get it attributed and published, your coin becomes historically significant. Even something as simple as documenting the story of how you found the coin, say, in a role you searched during the 2020 pandemic, can add a layer of interest for future buyers. Remember, collectors don't just buy coins. They buy stories, history, and connection. It's also worth considering networking. Many of the best deals in the coin world happen privately, between collectors and dealers who know and trust each other. Attending coin shows, joining collector organizations, and participating in online forums can give you access to opportunities the general public never sees. You might find a buyer willing to pay top dollar for a specific grade or variety. Or you might learn about a major upcoming auction before it's widely publicized. Knowledge and connections are powerful tools in numismatics. While we're talking strategy, let's address a controversial but important topic: roll searching and hoarding. Some collectors buy boxes of sealed bank rolls, sometimes thousands of coins at a time, and search through them for high grades, errors, or varieties. This can be time-consuming, but it's one of the cheapest ways to find valuable coins. If you find even a handful of MS68 coins or a rare error, you could make a profit. Others take a longer-term approach, setting aside unopened rolls of 2020 pennies for the future. If the penny is discontinued or demand spikes, those original rolls could become collectible themselves. Now, before we wrap up Part 5, we need to confront a reality that many beginners don't want to hear, but that seasoned collectors know well. Most 2020 pennies will never be worth more than face value. That's not a bad thing. It's just a fact. Billions were minted, and the vast majority are ordinary. But that doesn't make the search pointless. Quite the opposite. It's precisely because most are ordinary that the rare ones are valuable. If every coin were worth thousands, none of them would be. The rarity, the anomalies, the stories, those are what create value. And the only way to find those is to look. And here's the most beautiful thing about all of this: coin collecting isn't just about money. Sure, it's exciting to imagine finding an $87 million penny, even if it's not realistic. But the deeper reward is the knowledge you gain, the history you touch, and the joy of discovery you experience along the way. Every time you examine a coin, you're holding a piece of America's story in your hand. You're connecting with the people who designed it, minted it, spent it, and saved it. And you're becoming part of a tradition that stretches back centuries and will continue for generations to come. So, as we close Part 5, let's look back at what we've covered: the unbelievable auction stories that prove how valuable pennies can become, the strategies that top collectors use to build and maximize their collections, and the mindset that separates casual observers from passionate numismatists. The 2020 penny might be common, but it's also full of possibility. Whether it's a future gem hiding in your change, a cornerstone of a complete set, or a cherished piece of your personal collection, its story is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. As we enter this advanced stage of our exploration, it's important to remember a fundamental truth: coins don't exist in isolation. Their value isn't just determined by metal content, rarity, or even collector demand alone. It's part of a much bigger picture, one that involves global economics, shifts in monetary policy, cultural trends, technological innovation, and even geopolitical events. And when we look at the 2020 penny through that broader lens, we begin to see possibilities that go far beyond its original 1-cent purpose. Let's start with the economic perspective, because this is often overlooked by collectors. Coins are not just collectibles, they are monetary artifacts. They represent a particular moment in a nation's economy. In 2020, the world experienced one of the most turbulent economic periods in modern history. The global pandemic disrupted supply chains, shifted consumer habits, and accelerated the move toward digital payments. For the first time, many people seriously questioned the need for physical currency. That debate continues today, and it's one of the reasons analysts believe the penny's days may be numbered. If the US Mint ever discontinues the penny, and there's growing political and economic pressure to do so, the coins currently in circulation will instantly transition from money to history. Every cent, including the 2020 will become a relic of a bygone monetary era. Historically, that transition almost always leads to increased collector interest. It happened with silver coins when silver was removed from circulation in the 1960s. It happened with large cents when they were discontinued in 1857. It happened with the 2-cent and 3-cent pieces, the half-cent, and countless others. If the penny disappears, demand for complete sets, including modern issues like 2020 will likely skyrocket. Now, let's talk about macroeconomic forces and how they affect coin values. Inflation, for instance, can have a surprising impact. When inflation is high, the intrinsic purchasing power of small denominations shrinks, which often leads to calls for their elimination. But inflation also pushes more investors toward tangible assets: gold, silver, real estate, and yes, collectible coins. During periods of economic uncertainty, rare coins often outperform traditional investments. They're finite, they're portable, they're globally recognized, and they have intrinsic historical and cultural value. Even a copper-plated zinc penny can benefit from that dynamic if it's rare, high-grade, or historically significant. Another economic factor is the growing interest in alternative assets and collectibles among younger generations. Millennials and Gen Z are less likely to invest in traditional stocks and bonds and more likely to diversify into collectibles, from Pokemon cards to vintage sneakers to rare coins. That demographic shift is already reshaping the numismatic market. Coins once dismissed as too modern are gaining respect as historical artifacts. The 2020 penny, minted in a year that will be studied for decades, is poised to benefit from that trend. Next, let's move into advanced identification techniques, because this is where top collectors and numismatists separate themselves from casual hobbyists. The difference between a $1 coin and a $1,000 coin often comes down to details so small that they require specialized equipment to see. One of the most essential tools is a high-quality loupe or stereo microscope. Under magnification, tiny features become visible: die cracks, die chips, repunched mint marks, micro-doubling, die polish lines, and more. Each of these features can provide clues about the coin's origin, production process, and potential rarity. For example, a tiny die chip in the shield or lettering might seem insignificant, but if it appears consistently across multiple coins, it could indicate a specific die variety. A faint doubling on the date or motto could turn an ordinary penny into a highly collectible double die. Even the texture of the fields, the flat background areas, can reveal whether a coin was struck early or late in a die's life. Early die states often have sharper details and stronger luster, which can increase grade and value. Another advanced technique is die marriage attribution, identifying which obverse and reverse dies were paired together during production. While this is more common in early U.S. coinage, some modern specialists apply the same methodology to Lincoln cents. By studying die markers, unique scratches, chips, or polish lines, they can map out which dies were used and in what sequence. Occasionally, this research reveals previously unknown varieties or striking anomalies, which can become major discoveries in the numismatic community. Technology is also transforming how we study coins. Digital microscopes, 3D scanners, and AI-powered image recognition tools are becoming standard in high-level numismatic research. Some researchers are even using machine learning to detect micro-variations invisible to the human eye. These tools could one day identify unique characteristics in 2020 pennies that are currently undetected, characteristics that might make certain examples extremely desirable in the future. Now let's discuss global demand forecasting, because the coin market is increasingly international. U.S. coins are collected not just in America but around the world. In countries like Japan, Germany, and China, American coinage is seen as a piece of global history and culture. And because the US dollar remains a dominant global currency, coins tied to its history often carry prestige and demand far beyond US borders. This international interest adds resilience and depth to the market. Even if domestic demand fluctuates, global demand can sustain, or even increase, values over time. One interesting trend is the rise of numismatic investment funds in Europe and Asia. These are professionally managed portfolios of rare coins, similar to art investment funds. They often include high-grade modern coins because they offer liquidity and relatively low volatility. If that trend continues, it could create new demand for coins like the 2020D, particularly certified, high-grade examples with strong provenance. Let's not forget about cultural significance. The 2020D penny isn't just a coin. It's a snapshot of America in a pivotal year. Future historians and collectors will study it for what it represents: a nation grappling with a global crisis, political upheaval, and rapid technological change. Coins have always been time capsules. Roman denarii tell us about emperors and empires. Medieval coins revealed trade routes and cultural exchanges. Modern coins, including the 2020D penny, will one day serve the same purpose. That historical context adds intangible value, and intangible value often becomes tangible over time. Now, let's address market speculation carefully. While no responsible expert would ever claim that a 2020D penny is worth $87 million, speculation is a natural part of the coin market. People make educated guesses about which coins will appreciate most, which varieties will emerge, and which years will become historically significant. And speculation can be profitable, if it's based on knowledge and research, not hype. Some collectors believe that the 2020 issues will become key modern dates because of their historical significance and potential for low survival rates in high grades. Others speculate that new varieties will be discovered in coming decades, creating sleeper rarities. None of this is guaranteed, but it's plausible, and it's part of what makes collecting so exciting. Another speculative factor is future grading standards. As technology improves, grading could become even more precise, with more detailed categories for surface quality, strike sharpness, and die state. Coins that seem ordinary by today's standards could earn premium designations in the future. Conversely, if grading becomes stricter, top pop coins could become even scarcer and more valuable. We should also consider the possibility of cultural reappraisal. Public interest in Abraham Lincoln has remained strong for over a century, but historical figures go through cycles of popularity and reevaluation. A major anniversary, a blockbuster film, or a shift in cultural focus could suddenly boost demand for Lincoln-related collectibles, including pennies. History shows that cultural trends can have significant effects on numismatic markets. Let's take a moment to talk about legacy collecting, too. Many serious collectors aren't just building collections for. We've traveled a long way in this deep dive, from minting details and coin design to collector psychology, grading science, economic influences, global demand, and advanced attribution. But as we approach the end of this epic exploration, there's one thing we need to do: separate myth from reality. Because in the world of coin collecting, especially when it comes to modern coins like the 2020 penny, myths are everywhere. They spread like wildfire on social media, in online marketplaces, and even in mainstream news stories. And while some myths contain a kernel of truth, others are pure fantasy. Understanding which is crucial if you want to navigate this hobby successfully. The first and most persistent myth is, of course, that a single 2020 penny can be worth $87 million. As we've discussed many times, this is a dramatic exaggeration, and in most cases, a total fabrication. No modern business strike Lincoln cent, 2020 included, has ever sold anywhere near that figure. The most expensive coins in history, the 1794 silver dollar, the 1933 double eagle, the $1,804, sell in the tens of millions because they are historically unique, incredibly rare, and often have fascinating stories attached to them. A common modern penny simply doesn't check those boxes. Even the rarest known 2020 errors or highest grade specimens are worth hundreds or perhaps thousands of dollars, still impressive returns on a 1-cent coin, but far from mythical millions. Another widespread myth is that any coin with a visible anomaly is automatically valuable. Many beginners mistake common forms of damage or mechanical anomalies for rare errors. For example, machine doubling, a form of mechanical bounce during striking, is extremely common and usually adds no premium at all. Likewise, post-mint damage, such as scratches, gouges, or chemical discoloration, may look unusual but has no numismatic value. Genuine errors and varieties are often subtle and require careful examination and expertise to identify. This is why education is the collector's greatest weapon. The more you know, the better your chances of distinguishing trash from treasure. There's also the myth that old equals valuable, and while that's sometimes true, age alone is not enough. Rarity, condition, demand, and historical significance matter far more than age. A heavily worn 1919 penny might be worth less than a pristine 2020 and MS68 RD. Similarly, a rare 2020 double die might be worth more than a common coin from the 1800s. Age can enhance value, but it's never the sole determinant. Now that we've dispelled those myths, let's turn our attention to something far more exciting: long-term predictions. What might the future hold for the 2020 penny over the next 50 to 100 years? While we can't predict the future with absolute certainty, we can make reasoned forecasts based on historical patterns and current trends. Let's start with the 50-year horizon, around the year 2075. By then, it's highly likely that the US penny will have been discontinued. Economic pressure to eliminate it grows stronger every decade, and public sentiment continues to shift. If and when that happens, pennies will vanish from circulation relatively quickly. Most will be melted, lost, or discarded. Those that remain, especially uncirculated examples, certified high-grade coins, and rare errors, will become more desirable. A 2020 penny in MS68 RD or higher might sell for several $100s, perhaps even over $1,000, if population numbers remain low. Key varieties, if any are discovered, could command even higher prices. And complete sets of Lincoln cents, from 1909 to the final year of issue, will become museum-worthy collections. Looking out 75 years, the year 2100, the penny will likely be a historical artifact. Future generations will view it the way we view coins from the early 1900s today, common in low grades but prized in pristine condition. The 2020 will have an added layer of appeal because of its historical context, a coin struck during one of the most turbulent years of the 21st century. Collectors will seek it out as part of pandemic era memorabilia, Much like coins minted during the Civil War or World War II carry historical weight today. Top-graded examples could sell for several $1,000s, and rare varieties could reach into the tens of thousands. By the 100-year mark, around 2120, the landscape will be even more fascinating. Physical cash may no longer circulate at all. Digital currencies and biometric payment systems could dominate. But that will only make physical coins more collectible, not less. Think about how ancient Roman coins, once common currency, are now museum treasures. A 2020 penny might be displayed in exhibits about early 21st century life. Its value won't just be measured in dollars, it will be measured in cultural and historical significance. At that point, even a basic uncirculated example could be worth hundreds of dollars, while the finest known examples and unique errors could fetch sums that seem unimaginable today. Of course, all of these scenarios depend on one crucial factor: survival rate. The vast majority of 2020 pennies will never see the 22nd century. They'll be spent, worn down, melted, or lost. The coins that do survive, especially those preserved carefully from the start, will become increasingly rare over time. And rarity, as we know, is the lifeblood of numismatic value. Now let's pivot to something practical: tips for future collectors and investors who might be watching this video not just for entertainment but for actionable advice. If you want to maximize the potential of a 2020 penny, or any modern coin, here's what experts recommend. First, cherry-pick quality. Most coins straight from circulation will grade between MS60 and MS64. But coins with exceptional luster, sharp strikes, and virtually no contact marks might reach MS67 or MS68, and that's where the real premiums begin. Examine every coin closely under good lighting and magnification. Look for clean fields, sharp details, and strong eye appeal. Second, submit strategically. Professional grading isn't cheap, so don't send every coin you find. Focus on coins you believe have a shot at top grades or those that exhibit potential errors or varieties. Pre-screen them carefully before submission. Many experienced collectors submit coins in batches to reduce per-coin costs. Third, document everything. If you discover a new variety or error, take high-resolution photos, write a detailed description, and submit it to organizations like Kanika or Wexler's Die Varieties. If the discovery is confirmed and published, your coin's value can skyrocket, and your name could be attached to numismatic history forever. Fourth, store for the long term. Use inert holders, capsules, or slabs to protect your coins from environmental damage. Keep them in a cool, dry, stable environment away from humidity and temperature extremes. Label them clearly and keep detailed records of where and how you acquired them. Future collectors and buyers will value that provenance. Fifth, think generationally. Don't just collect for yourself, collect for the future. Build sets that tell a story. Record your research, your discoveries, and your insights. When your collection is passed down or sold decades from now, that documentation can add enormous historical and educational value. And finally, enjoy the process. At the end of the day, coin collecting is about more than money. It's about curiosity, discovery, and connection. It's about holding a piece of history in your hand and understanding the world a little better because of it. The 2020 penny might be a small, humble object, but it connects you to a vast tapestry of stories, from the founding of the U.S. Mint in 1792 to the technological marvels of modern minting, from the artistry of engravers to the hands of everyday people who spent it. Let's also reflect on something profound: the irony of value. The penny is often dismissed as worthless. People leave it on the ground. Stores ignore it. It costs more to produce than it's worth. And yet that same penny, under the right circumstances, can become a coveted collector's item, a historical artifact, even a six-figure treasure. That paradox captures the magic of numismatics. It reminds us that value is never fixed. It's a story we write over time. One of the most fascinating aspects of any coin, including the 2020 penny, is the process that brings it into existence. Most people think coins are simply stamped out by machines, but the reality is far more complex and far more human. It all begins long before the presses ever strike a planchet. The journey starts with a design, and that design is the product of artistry, symbolism, history, and national identity. The Lincoln cent design we know today is the result of over a century of evolution, from Victor David Brenner's iconic 1909 portrait of Abraham Lincoln to the shield reverse introduced in 2010, representing national unity and strength. Behind the scenes, dozens of people are involved in transforming that design from an idea into a tangible object. Sculptors and engravers at the U.S. Mint use a combination of traditional hand-carving techniques and cutting-edge digital modeling to perfect every detail. Once a design is approved, it's scaled down using a reducing lathe or digital milling system to create a master hub. From that hub, master dies are produced, which in turn create working dies, the tools that actually strike the coins. These dies are carefully polished, heat-treated, and inspected. Even the smallest imperfection in a die can lead to errors, some of which become highly collectible. The striking process itself is a marvel of precision engineering. Blanks, small discs of copper-plated zinc, are punched from large coils of metal. They're annealed, washed, and polished before being fed into high-speed presses that strike them with over 50 tons of pressure per blow. Each press can produce hundreds of coins per minute, yet even with this automation, subtle variations occur. Slight differences in die pressure, alignment, temperature, or metal composition can result in unique anomalies: doubled dies, off-centers, die cracks, broad strikes, and more. It's these small imperfections that often create the most desirable coins for collectors. But there's another layer to this story, one most collectors never consider: internal mint culture. Employees at the Denver Mint, the D Mint mark on the 2020 D penny, are deeply aware of the collector world. They know that every small variation can become a big deal. In some cases, they even keep internal records of unusual production runs, die changes, or quality control incidents, details that rarely make it into public reports. While no official, secret list exists, longtime numismatists know that some of the most valuable varieties were never publicly documented by the Mint. They were discovered years later by sharp-eyed collectors. There are also whispered stories, hard to verify but persistent, about intentional design tweaks, experimental planchets, and special strikes that slipped into circulation. Sometimes these were test runs that weren't supposed to leave the Mint. Sometimes they were part of educational outreach or quality control experiments. And sometimes they were simply human error. Every once in a while, these stories prove true, as in the case of transitional planchets, mule errors, and prototype dies that escaped into the wild. Could a similar, hidden treasure exist among 2020 D pennies? It's unlikely, but not impossible. And that small possibility is part of what keeps collectors searching. Now, let's talk about something deeper: the psychology of collecting. Why do people obsess over coins? Why do they spend countless hours searching through pocket change, rolls from the bank, or online auctions for something as simple as a 1-cent piece? The answer lies in human nature. Collecting taps into some of our most primal instincts: curiosity, discovery, ownership, and storytelling. Coins are small, tangible pieces of history that we can hold in our hands. Each one has traveled through countless pockets, transactions, and moments. Each one connects us, in a literal, physical way, to millions of other lives. For many collectors, the thrill isn't just in the value. It's in the hunt. It's the excitement of the unknown, the idea that any roll of pennies might contain a hidden rarity, that any pocket change might hold a story no one has yet uncovered. That sense of adventure is addictive. It's why collectors search relentlessly, even when the odds are low. And when they do find something special, a rare variety, a flawless gem, a once-in-a-lifetime error, the satisfaction is profound. It's not just about money. It's about the joy of discovery and the deep satisfaction of knowing something others don't. That same psychology will continue to drive collecting far into the future, and that brings us to one of the most fascinating questions of all: how will people 100, 200, even 300 years from now view the 2020 D penny? To answer that, we need to think about how we view coins from centuries past. Consider a Roman bronze coin from the 3rd century AD. It was once as common as the penny is today, spent on bread, tools, and everyday goods. Now, it's a precious artifact, carefully studied, catalogued, and displayed in museums. Collectors treasure it not because it's rare in the absolute sense, many Roman coins still exist, but because it's a direct, tangible link to a civilization long gone. The 2020 penny will follow a similar path. By the 23rd century, it will be an artifact of the early digital age, a relic from a time when people still used physical currency, when coins were struck in massive numbers by a powerful industrial nation. Future historians will study it for what it reveals about American society, its economy, its art, its technology, its politics, even its values. The Lincoln portrait will be analyzed as a symbol of how 21st century America viewed leadership and legacy. The shield reverse will be examined as a metaphor for unity in a divided era. Even the composition, copper-plated zinc, will be a clue to the economics of the time. It's entirely possible that future museums will have exhibits devoted to the age of physical currency, with the 2020 penny displayed alongside other coins of the era. Digital archivists may preserve high-resolution scans of its surface for study. Numismatic databases might track every known example with blockchain-backed provenance. And collectors of the future, perhaps living in a world without physical cash, will compete fiercely for pristine specimens of this simple, outdated coin. But perhaps the most profound legacy of the 2020 penny won't be its metal or its mint mark, it will be the stories it carries. Stories of a turbulent year when the world changed. Stories of ordinary people using it to buy everyday necessities. Stories of collectors who cherished it, studied it, and preserved it. Stories of a nation grappling with its past and future. And ultimately, the story of how something so small and seemingly insignificant became a vessel for meaning across generations. As we close this epic journey, there's one final truth worth reflecting on, a truth that underlies everything we've discussed: value is not inherent. It's assigned. A penny is worth 1 cent because society agrees it is. A rare coin is worth thousands because collectors agree it is. And a humble 2020 penny might one day be worth far more than we can imagine because future generations decide it has meaning. Value is a story, and stories, unlike metal, never wear out. So when you look at a 2020 penny, whether it's in your pocket, in a coin roll, in a slab, or in a museum case centuries from now, don't just see a small piece of metal. See a bridge between past and future. See a testament to human creativity, ingenuity, and persistence. See a tiny artifact that, in its own quiet way, tells the story of who we were, what we valued, and how we lived. And remember this: every great numismatic discovery starts with curiosity. Every legendary collection starts with a single coin. Every record-breaking sale starts with someone who saw value where others saw nothing. Maybe, just maybe, that person is you, and maybe, just maybe, that coin is a 2020 penny. If you've followed us through this incredible journey, from the minting floors of the Denver Mint to the farthest reaches of numismatic theory, from the micro-details of die varieties to the vast sweep of history, then by now you understand something that most people never will: a coin is never just a coin. A 2020 penny is not just a piece of copper-plated zinc, not just a tool for commerce, not just loose change in a jar. It is a story, a symbol, a time capsule, and perhaps, in the right hands, a treasure. We started with a simple question: how could a coin worth 1 cent possibly be worth millions? Or even be talked about as if it were worth $87 million? The answer, as we've seen, is not found in its face value, or its weight, or even its design alone. It's found in the layers of meaning we assign to it, the history it carries, the rarity it might possess, the errors it might conceal, the journey it has taken, and the possibilities it holds for the future. It's found in the passion of collectors, the meticulous work of graders, the relentless curiosity of historians, and the thrill of discovery that keeps this hobby alive. Coins, like people, have stories, and their value grows as those stories deepen. The 2020 penny story is still being written. It began at the Denver Mint, struck in a year that will be remembered as one of the most transformative in modern history. It passed through countless hands, maybe yours, maybe mine. exchanged for gum or groceries, tucked away in a drawer, rolled into a bank tube, or placed carefully into a collector's album. Maybe it will spend decades in circulation before someone finally notices a small doubling on the date. Maybe it will be discovered, decades from now, as part of a once-unknown die variety. Maybe it will end up in a museum as a symbol of early 21st century America. Or maybe, and this is the most beautiful possibility of all, it will spark someone's lifelong passion for numismatics. And that, ultimately, is the real magic of a coin like this. It's not about its face value. It's not even about its market value. It's about its power to connect people, across time, across generations, across cultures. It's about how something so small and ordinary can ignite curiosity, inspire learning, and bridge the gap between the past and the future. It's about how a humble penny can teach us profound truths about value, scarcity, history, and ourselves. Think about this. The most expensive coins in the world didn't start out as treasures. They started as everyday objects. The 1794 flowing hair dollar, now worth tens of millions, was just a silver coin used in trade. The 1933 double eagle, worth nearly $20 million, was minted for circulation and then withdrawn. Even the legendary 1804 silver dollar, often called the king of American coins, was unknown to collectors for decades. What transformed them from money into masterpieces was time, and the people who cared enough to preserve them. The same could be true of the 2020 D penny. Most will be forgotten. Most will vanish. But a few, a tiny, precious few, will survive in extraordinary condition, in special varieties, or with fascinating stories attached. And those few will become treasures. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. And if you're lucky, if you're attentive, if you're passionate, maybe one of those treasures will pass through your hands. And here's the most exciting part: you don't need millions of dollars, a fancy collection, or insider connections to be part of that story. All you need is curiosity. All you need is the willingness to look closely, to learn, to care. Because history isn't just in museums. It's in your pocket. It's in your wallet. It's in the change tray at the grocery store. And every coin you encounter is a potential discovery waiting to happen. So the next time you pick up a penny, especially one from 2020 with that little D under the date, don't just toss it aside. Look closer. Study it. Imagine where it's been and where it might go. Think about the stories it could tell and the history it might represent. And remember, in the world of numismatics, the greatest treasures often hide in plain sight. As we close this epic journey, let this be the takeaway, not just for collectors, but for everyone: value is created by attention. Most people walk past history without noticing it. Most people see only what something is, not what it could be. But collectors, historians, and dreamers see more. They see the potential in the ordinary. They see the extraordinary hiding in plain view. And that mindset, that way of seeing, is what transforms a simple coin into a priceless artifact. The 2020 D penny is more than just a cent. It's a reminder that even the smallest things can hold the greatest stories. It's proof that history is not just something that happened, it's something that's still happening, right now, in your hands. And it's an invitation to look closer, to learn more, to collect, to discover, and to become part of something much larger than yourself. So whether you're a seasoned numismatist with decades of experience, or a beginner holding your very first penny, remember this: the next great discovery might already be in your pocket. And the next great story in coin collecting might begin, today, with you. Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary journey through the world of the 2020 D Lincoln penny. And as always, keep searching, keep learning, and never stop believing that history is closer than you think. Because sometimes, the most ordinary coin in the world can turn out to be the most extraordinary treasure of all. And so, we arrive at the end of this extraordinary journey, a journey that started with a single question about a single coin and evolved into a deep exploration of history, economics, art, science, psychology, and the very nature of value itself. From the bustling minting halls of Denver to the quiet thrill of a collector's desk, from the hands of millions who spent this coin without a second thought to the meticulous eyes of those who study every millimeter of its surface. The 2020 penny has taken us on a journey far bigger than its size suggests. It is humbling, isn't it? That something so small, something so ordinary, can carry with it such vast significance. That a coin barely weighing 2.5 grams, minted by the billions, can become a vessel for stories that stretch across centuries. That what many see as worthless, others see as priceless. And in that transformation lies a lesson, not just about coins, but about life. The 2020 penny teaches us that greatness is not always born in gold or silver. Sometimes it is hidden in copper and zinc. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. Sometimes it slips through your fingers without notice. And sometimes, if you're patient enough to look closer, you discover that the smallest things are the ones that carry the deepest meaning. Every scratch, every mark, every subtle variation on that penny tells a story, of machines that struck it, of workers who produced it, of hands that spent it, of eyes that overlooked it, and of minds that finally noticed it. It's a story of America in 2020, a year that tested the world, that reshaped our economies, our societies, and our daily lives. And it's a story of how even in times of upheaval, our traditions endure. Traditions like minting coins, honoring history, and finding beauty in the tangible. Maybe, one day, someone far in the future will hold this very coin. They'll study its details with wonder. They'll marvel at its age. They'll read about the year 2020 in their history books and feel a connection to the people who lived through it, to you, to me, to all of us. And in that moment, this tiny penny will have done something extraordinary. It will have bridged the gap between generations, connecting lives separated by centuries. That is the true power of coins, not just as money, not just as collectibles, but as time travelers. They outlive us. They outlast governments, trends, and technologies. They endure as silent witnesses to our stories. And the 2020 penny, humble and overlooked though it may be, is one of those witnesses. So, as we close this final chapter, let this be the message you carry with you: never underestimate the power of the ordinary. Never assume that something is worthless just because it's common. Never pass by a piece of history because it seems small. For in the world of numismatics, and in life itself, it is often the smallest things that hold the most extraordinary value. The 2020 penny is not just a coin. It is a lesson. A lesson in patience, in perspective, in passion, and in possibility. A lesson that tells us to look closer, think deeper, and cherish more. Because in a world that moves too fast and overlooks too much, the act of paying attention, truly paying attention, is a rare and precious thing. And so, whether you're holding a shiny uncirculated gem or a well-worn cent that's passed through countless hands, remember, it's not just metal. It's history. It's art. It's science. It's memory. It's a story, your story, my story, humanity's story, captured forever in copper and zinc. This is the end of our journey, but it's also the beginning of yours. Go search through your change. Go explore your collection. Go learn, discover, and build. Because the next great chapter in the story of the 2020 penny, and maybe the next legendary numismatic discovery, is still waiting to be written. And maybe, just maybe, it will be written by you. Thank you for joining me on this unforgettable adventure. Until next time, keep your eyes open, keep your curiosity alive, and keep believing that even the smallest coin can hold the biggest story. Because in the world of collecting, and in the world itself, value isn't found in the obvious. It's found in the overlooked. And with that, we place a final period at the end of our tale. A tale of a penny worth 1 cent, a story worth millions, and a legacy that will last for generations. This is the story of the 2020 Lincoln penny, and its journey has only just begun.